Tonight, consent agreement. A former teacher in Fort St. John suspended for life. Residents in Tumbler Ridge are being asked to treat healthcare workers with respect. And Splash Park. Upgrade improvements coming to Kin Park in Dawson Creek. Good evening, and thank you very much for joining us. We begin tonight with a former teacher in Fort St. John who has been banned for life from the teaching profession. Back in 2021, CJDC-TV broke the news that Devin Gray was arrested at Margaret Murray School. Gray was then investigated but never charged with child pornography offenses. According to the Commissioner for Teacher Regulation, sexual images of school-aged children were uploaded to a Tumblr account. The account and an email address were linked to an IP address at the residence in Fort St. John where Gray lived. In February of 2021, police searched Gray's home and seized electronic devices. One of those devices contained over 500 photos and video of children believed to be between the ages of 3 and 13 years old. Crown Counsel did not approve criminal charges, but Gray was placed on leave the day he was arrested. Gray entered into a consent agreement this July, admitting to conduct unbecoming to the profession. He agreed to never again apply for a teaching certificate. Police in Hudson's Hope say they've arrested a man wanted by Chetwynd RCMP on outstanding warrants. Jacob Colton LaPrette was wanted for aggravated assault, uttering threats, and assault. Hudson's Hope Mounties saying he was arrested Tuesday afternoon. They say the 33-year-old was located at the Sportsman Inn on Beatty Drive. Chetwynd RCMP announced they were looking for LaPrette last week. Well, another hospital diversion to tell you about tonight, this time in Fort Nelson. Northern Health taking to social media to announce the closure of the emergency department. The diversion started at 7 this morning and continued until 3 this afternoon. The health authority citing unexpected staffing challenges as the reason. Northern Health telling residents to still call 911 if they need life-saving care. Patients would be transported to the nearest hospital, which is in Fort St. John. The closure marks the 4th hospital diversion in Fort Nelson this year. And Northern Health is asking communities of the South Peace region to treat healthcare staff with respect. Northern Health says residents are confronting Tumbler Ridge Health Center staff and physicians to express their frustration with the health authority. And they say confronting them at work during their personal time or any time on social media is simply inappropriate. Northern Health says community healthcare workers deserve appreciation since they've also been affected by staffing issues. This growing frustration comes after Northern Health reduced after-hours emergency care coverage in Tumbler Ridge. Health officials say there are many ways to express concerns to Northern Health directly, and they add the changes are temporary. They say residents may now notice a security presence at the health center. Well, City Council in Dawson Creek has approved a $3.6 million project to upgrade Kin Park. The Splash Park will be one of the first of its kind in northern BC. The city says $1.8 million will go towards the purchase of equipment, the design, and mechanical systems. Staff say the park will use a new water-efficient system that will consume up to 1,000 times less water than older flow-through parks. Because of the complexity, city staff recommend hiring a specialized company from the BC Interior. The park is expected to be installed this spring. More than 24 people, mostly in BC and Alberta, have become ill with Salmonella. Investigators say many of those victims have one thing in common. They got sick after handling dog food. But, as St. John Alexander reports, the Public Health Agency isn't quite sure which brand may be responsible.
The severity of illness among dog owners varies. Some people showed mild symptoms of Salmonella. Others had fevers, severe headaches, diarrhea. Most of them told doctors they had just fed the dog, using different brands of treats or kibble.
Those are all currently under investigation to determine if there is one or more specific products that are causing the illnesses.
They do know 12 people became ill in BC, 13 in Alberta, and 1 each in Ontario and the Northwest Territories. Patients range from kids to seniors. The Public Health Agency says pet food can be contaminated with bacteria, and people can get sick through contact with a dog or its food. So they recommend cleaning their dishes frequently and ensuring everyone, especially children, wash their hands right after handling foods and treats.
They are often feeding the dogs, so don't forget about them. And also, they're much more susceptible to a more severe salmonella infection.
People reported getting sick in February and into mid-August. They reported giving a wide range of food, including freeze-dried treats. Among the investigation, finding a common trend, like whether different companies use the same suppliers.
That's all very much under investigation, so it's just a process that does take some time.
And they believe the number of infections is much higher because many people who had mild symptoms likely didn't report it. St. John Alexander, CTV News, Vancouver.
As we saw this summer, the wildfire season is getting worse, becoming more dangerous for homeowners. But a European approach is now being tested here in BC using a material that is fire resistant. Andrew Johnson now on a natural approach to an age-old threat.
Inside this home being built in Lumby, BC, some of the sights and sounds of construction are what you'd expect, others not so much. The wood frame is being encased in what's being mixed outside, not concrete, hempcrete.
This first originated out of Europe. They've been building with hempcrete for generations.
Stuffed inside the extra thick walls of this place is something called hemp mash. It's a mixture of hemp, lime, and water.
It replaces drywall and insulation. On the outside of the house, a coating that acts as armor in the event of a wildfire.
As you can see, we're shooting a very hot flame at this.
He says the lime material can endure flames for more than 2 hours, part of a fire-resistant shell that also includes a metal roof and metal-clad windows.
When a wildfire happens to pass through this property, it has a very good chance of surviving.
The owner, Kathy Haslett, figures she's paying about a 15% premium over standard construction and thinks it's worth every penny.
What are you saving? You're saving a ton. If a fire comes through, it doesn't burn. You're not losing your home and everything in it.
The hempcrete also absorbs a significant amount of carbon and is expected to last 100 years. It's most commonly used in Europe. The designer of this home says the biggest obstacle in Canada is awareness.
If people don't know that it's an option, they can't choose it. What I love about it so much is that it's a material that is healthy for both people and planet.
Kathy's hoping to move into this place before Christmas, and the builders hope this is just the beginning of big demand for hempcrete in a region where the threat of wildfires is a yearly reality. Andrew Johnson, CTV News, Lumby, BC.
Well, critics are speaking out over the provincial and federal government's decision we told you about last night to sign off on a controversial liquid natural gas export facility on BC's north coast. The LNG project is expected to have the capacity to export 120 million tons of liquefied natural gas annually to countries in Asia. Now, the export facility would include a pair of twin floating platforms at Pierce Island near the Alaska border. Opponents cite environmental concerns, a lack of consensus among hereditary First Nations, and the project's American owner.
For months, all we've heard from our politicians is that we're elbows up against the United States, against Donald Trump, and against the authoritarian MAGA movement. And it's a real disconnect to see our premier approve a project that is American-owned, with American investors, and an American company building the pipeline.
The Premier says welcoming and encouraging international investment is key to creating more jobs here in BC. 4 of 7 nearby First Nations did not provide consent for the project. Canadians haven't seen a bank rate cut since March, nor have we seen it this low in years, after the Bank of Canada today eased its trend-setting interest rate to 2.5%. That means some variable rates have dropped below fixed rates, which is certainly an improvement over last year. Michael Couture takes a closer look at the central bank's thinking behind the rate reduction.
With global economic growth showing signs of slowing, Tiff Macklem says much of the uncertainty is because of the trade war with the U.S.
Tariffs are weakening the Canadian economy.
Canada's central banker couldn't be more blunt.
as exports dropped by 27% in the second quarter of this year and inflation rose by 1.9%, Tiff Macklem and his team decided it was best to lower interest rates.
Canadians remain concerned about the cost of living, and our primary mandate is to maintain low, stable inflation, and we are very focused on that.
Canada's GDP declined by 1.6% in the second quarter, and some forecasts have the rest of the year looking flat, leading some economists to use the R word.
The term is technical recession, where there's two negative quarters. Well, certainly we're pretty well there. The third quarter, it's going to be flat at best.
The central bank disagrees, predicting modest growth in the second half of the year. But Macklem says that could change depending on what comes from the U.S.
Where there's a significant escalation of tariffs, U.S. tariffs, in that scenario, the Canadian economy does go into recession.
The effects of the trade war are also being felt in the U.S., where job gains have slowed and inflation ticked up. It's why the U.S. Federal Reserve recommended cutting its interest rate by 25 basis points on Wednesday. And while the decisions in each country are made independently, it does provide some perspective.
You know, we talk about we got a big deficit of debt. Well, theirs is way bigger than ours are.
The Bank of Canada's next rate decision is in October, but it's unclear if there will be another cut then. With the federal budget expected November 4th, Macklem could wait to see the scope of government spending before cutting the interest rate again. Mike Lecouteur, CTV News, Ottawa.
3 more senior ministers in former Prime Minister Justin Trudeau's cabinet are reportedly set to receive diplomatic appointments. Now, CTV News has learned former Defence Minister Bill Blair will likely become the High Commissioner to the United Kingdom. Former Justice Minister David Lametti will be the Ambassador to the United Nations, and former Energy Minister Jonathan Wilkinson has been offered Ambassador to the European Union. This follows the announcement yesterday that Chrystia Freeland will become Canada's new Special Representative to Ukraine. The United States is taking the first official step toward renegotiating its trade agreement with Canada and Mexico. America's trade representative will begin 45 days of public consultation. The move is prior to a mandated review of the trade deal next year. There will also be a public hearing in November. The Prime Minister is looking to change some aspects of the deal, Mark Carney pointing to exemptions in trade law that allowed the United States to impose sectoral tariffs on Canada. Mexico has also started a public consultation process to gather information on the functioning of the trade agreement. It has so far shielded Canada and Mexico from the full impacts of American tariffs. Meanwhile, Mark Carney will travel to Mexico tomorrow. The Prime Minister's office says he'll meet with the President of Mexico. The two are scheduled to talk about security, infrastructure, investment, energy, and trade. The visit is intended to enhance ties with one of Canada's key trading partners. Now to the United Kingdom now, where Donald Trump is being hosted by King Charles at Windsor Castle. The UK is pulling out all the stops for the US president, who is known to be a fan of the royals. CTV's Joy Melvin reports.
Talk about a royal charm offensive. The U.S. President Donald Trump and First Lady Melania arrived to a spectacular welcome, greeted by Prince William and Princess Catherine, and then King Charles and Queen Camilla. Pulling out all the stops designed to dazzle the U.S. president, who's a great admirer of the late Queen and royal family. There was a massive military performance, a fly past with the red arrows, but all of this is happening inside these castle walls where security is very tight, and avoiding the large number of anti-Trump protesters here and in London. Today's pomp is a rare honor for this president. It's meant to strengthen ties between the U.S. and the UK, the so-called special relationship, and it's recognition that the U.S. president has craved. The British government hopes this will smooth over some thorny issues when Prime Minister Keir Starmer meets with Trump over tariffs. The government hopes to ink new trade and technology deals, and there's also the issue of support for Ukraine. While King Charles is politically neutral, he may delicately raise the issue with the president, capping the day with a lavish banquet fit for the president and hosted by the king. Today, the pageantry, tomorrow, the politics. All of this happening in just 48 hours. Joy Melvin, CTV News, Windsor.
All right, this beautiful stretch of weather that we've been enjoying here in Northeast BC continue today. Stay tuned. Noah will be right back with weather.